Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Glad that you all made it. We're a little bit late today, but that's okay. Audio issues, imagine that. Who would have guessed? Good morning, Mr. Toast. How are you?
Yeah, good morning to everyone. I'm good. I'm good. It's Christ himself rather than Toast, right?
Yeah, so Christos did a YouTube video, and YouTube took his name and turned it in the auto closed captions and turned it to Christ himself. So
And
I
since my
personally don't
status
think that
has-
was an accident, but
And since my status is elevated to that level, I think I'm gonna start charging for premium tweets from now on. So you friends, if you want to communicate with me from now on, you have to pay. I think my Twitter counter now will just go down to 2 followers. You know what? I'm not scared because out of the 4,000 something followers, I think 4,000 are just bots and random people just following me. You know when you ask a question on Twitter and you're like, I've got followers, somebody can come back and in silence. It's like, what? Do I even have any live organisms just following me, or is it just bots? Anyway,
I just blame the algorithm, right?
it could be.
That's right.
I mean, there's so much in there that it's highly unlikely that you'll catch some of these questions. But anyway, no premium tweets for me. I promise. I will keep it free for everyone. I'm all for the community, you know.
something tells me that that premium tweets will end up being the premium tweets are going to end up being the the ego correction of our time. There'll be a lot of people like, wait a minute, you mean people don't want to pay to hear my musings?
I know, it's insane, right?
Although,
You know what? I will gladly pay Twitter a premium or a fee to stop doing stupid ads. Like the targeted ads that you get every
Yeah.
3 or 4 tweets. That's so annoying. Hey,
I
man,
agree.
I'll give you $15 and I want a medium where I can communicate my French. Sorry, Seb.
Yeah, no, same thing here. I get these wonderful mobile game ads for all the time. I don't know what I did to deserve those, but they're the really stupid ones where they show like a puzzle, and then they're
Yeah.
like, oh, no, like 0% can solve this. It's the worst.
yeah, every time I saw one the other day, and it's like somebody doing a game the wrong way, and you're so like you're looking at it, and you're so compelled to be like, no, you're doing it wrong.
That's how they get you.
Oh, you've been muted, man. Easy
good
wildfire dimming stuff. Did you not create this kind of a...
Are you guys doing predictions on this thing as well? Can we start doing like predictions on like will my code compile or something?
Except for you, you're the only one who can hear it, so we haven't even introduced you yet.
Oh, nice.
Okay, I guess my voice
Well-
is back. I'm going to introduce you quickly before before I end up getting muted again. So
Makes all the sense.
anyway, so we've got so we have Sebastian here this morning from JetBrains. It's very not morning for him, but it is morning at least for us. So good morning.
Yeah. Hi. Good evening. I'm Sebastian.
Sebastian from the
yeah.
future.
Yeah.
So-
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, like Friday night is still a-okay. You have a lot of good things to look forward to.
Nice. Nice.
That's good to know. Well, so on the one thing on Twitter before we go, I am right now in a heated argument with about 35 people on an email thread, and I need your votes to prove to them that the internet thinks that they are also wrong the same way that I believe they are wrong. So here's a link to a tweet. I need you to go read it and vote in it. And if you think that I'm wrong, I need you to tell me why, because I cannot figure out how it is wrong.
I've already voted
So-
for that. I was like your first vote.
Okay,
see.
well, I'm convinced, 100% convinced that. Oh, thanks, Frank, for bringing your folks over. So, what were you guys working on
Hey.
with Frank today?
Blazer. They were doing
So,
Blazer.
look, it's a pretty straightforward ask. If you're familiar with OpenID hybrid flow,
The mullet.
Yeah.
The mullet
So
of flows.
I'm just gonna. That seems.
so yeah, so if you're familiar with hybrid flow, in my opinion, hybrid flow without a secret is implicit flow with a different name, and we are very clear that you shouldn't use implicit flow. and yet we say it's okay for hybrid flow, and I don't like that. So anyway, okay, so on to today. So today's show, so Sebastian will tell us all about what he does and where he works and everything else. But when we talked a few weeks ago, we get a ton of requests for things like, hey, can you build a Kotlin mobile app? Hey, can you build a Kotlin app with Ktor? Like we had a show on that probably a couple months ago. And we said, well, like I've been doing like .NET primarily for a long time and JavaScript and stuff like that. And I thought it'd be cool to learn Kotlin for someone who has used another language or is familiar at least with other languages, and so that's what we're going to get into today. So it's sort of like a getting started. It's sort of an intro, but it's also sort of a, if you're familiar with writing software in other languages and you want to switch to Kotlin or you need to use it for a project or whatever, we've got just the guy. So, Sebastian, tell us what you do. Tell us what you do over at JetBrains.
So as luck would have it, I'm a developer advocate for Kotlin, actually for the Kotlin language itself. So we employ a team of about 100 people who develop the language, and
Wow.
I have it's a big team, and I have the pleasure of being one of 4 people who I don't know how big my team is. Depends on how you count them. To kind of bring the new things that we build inside the language to the public, and that is in the form of tutorials. That is in the form of talks, and that is in the form of like these kind of like live streams as well.
Very cool.
Very nice.
So, how long have you? I don't really know much about the history of Kotlin. I just remember that one day a buddy of mine who does a lot of Java work said, "Oh yeah, you should check it out," and it suddenly became common parlance, and I started hearing about it all the time. So, like, how long has it been around?
So Kotlin 1.0 was released in 2016, I believe. So that's
Okay.
5 years ago, something like that. And yeah, it's been kind of like it's had its growth periods, but when it really started like lifting off like crazy was when on Google I/O in I think 2018. Someone will correct me on that. Google said, "Well, we're now supporting Kotlin for Android development,"
Nice.
which was already great. And then a year later, they said, "Okay, Kotlin is going to be the go-to language for Android," and then things just exploded because at that point it literally meant like if they provide new APIs, they guarantee that it'll be documented and that there will be examples in Kotlin, but not in any other languages. Like there might still be Java examples, for example, but there's no guarantee for it. And at that point, everything just kind of exploded and skyrocketed. Funnily enough, that was not interesting for me at all because I'm not an Android developer.
For people that haven't done Kotlin or they don't know Kotlin, how would you describe Kotlin? Is it like a superset of Java? Is it a derivative of Java?
It's like if C# and the JVM had a baby, I guess. Maybe.
So it's the good things of Java with the good things of C# and you're able to... Yeah.
So Kotlin kind of has this. Kotlin isn't afraid to say like, okay, some wheels don't need reinventing. It's okay to take good parts from other languages. So you'll see, like if you've ever written Swift, you'll see some constructs that are very similar. If you've written TypeScript, you'll see things that are very similar. But the underlying why did we create Kotlin in the first place? Mm-hmm. We didn't create it so that Android developers would have a nicer language to write. That was actually just a nice side effect. The reason why we initially created this is because we at JetBrains happened to create these wonderful tools like the one that I'm running right here, like IntelliJ. Mm-hmm. And these are all built in Java. Like they're all JVM development environments. And we've been developing this thing for 20 years. We turned 20 now. I think if I go to like this about page, you can even see our little like celebratory icon showing like that we're at 20 years now. And we quickly realized that there are some limitations in the Java programming language that hampered our own productivity. And since we already had a lot of knowledge about, well, everything from abstract syntax trees to compilers, just because, it's our bread and butter interacting with these tools, we figured, maybe we can do this better. And again, I'm a bit biased, but I think we did a pretty good job. I think we kind of managed to fix some of the problems we had in other languages. Just kind of give a very nice all-round experience.
Nice.
Very cool. So if I'm coming from something like a .NET or a Java or any sort of statically typed language, I imagine this will be relatively familiar.
Absolutely. So Kotlin, just like any other language, is just a statically typed language as well. If you have if you write something, you'll see that I didn't actually type this type out. So we have type inference like many other languages as well, but we are still statically typed under the hood, which is kind of useful because once again it allows your IDE to kind of reason about your program, and it allows you to make much more sensible suggestions as well, like all these things.
Question from Levinson 2504: Is Kotlin aimed towards beginners who are learning Android dev?
So if you're just starting to learn Android, I think Google now recommends you start with Kotlin as well. And we at JetBrains actually also think that Kotlin is a great language to learn as a first programming language. I can actually, if I can pitch something here. My colleague Svetlana has written a book together with Bruce Eckel called Atomic Kotlin, which starts you off from zero. So if you have never programmed before, Atomic Kotlin is going to teach you from the ground up.
Is this free?
I think the first 3 or 4 chapters are free, and after that, you should have, I think, enough of a basic understanding to kind of maybe explore on your own, or you can buy the rest of the book.
Yeah, so the URL is Atomic Kotlin. Right, we'll add the URL in the video on YouTube, so when you watch it offline, in fact, I'm just going to add it on the Twitch stream now, so...
Sounds good.
I think the thing...
Go
ahead. No, go ahead. That's a good question.
From Vahed. Is Kotlin for Android development mostly, or is it for other solutions as well?
That really depends on who you ask. So yeah, I mean, there's a certain search engine company which I think is very, very keen on having Kotlin be the mobile language.
Right.
But for us, we're really interested in seeing Kotlin everywhere. So we are currently pushing really strongly towards people using Kotlin on server side. On mobile, but also on for desktop development, for example. I know that's kind of a dying breed. We hope to revitalize that, but so even if you're building like native apps for macOS, Windows, you can do that with Kotlin quite nicely as well.
Very nice.
And there's actually a bunch of other interesting sectors that we're trying to conquer. One of the big ones currently is data science. Currently, I think the strongest contender there is Python, because there's a lot of machine learning libraries. There's just a huge ecosystem, but we have a bunch of actually really interesting libraries for this kind of stuff as well. We have, let me just pull something up here, Kotlin. We have Kotlin DL, which stands for Kotlin Deep Learning, which kind of gives you this whole framework of doing deep learning. We have multi-K, I believe it's called multi-K, which allows you to do a lot of the things that Python developers like to do, which is these like multi-dimensional arrays, vectors, like all this kind of stuff. We're really we're trying to bring as much functionality into Kotlin as possible, so that people can just be productive in whatever they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So one of the things I've always noticed is there are plenty of things the syntax is syntax is familiar because it's like this other language, or the way that you use it is similar to this other language. But the thing that I always seem to get hung up on, especially when I'm trying to learn something new, is what are the opinions of the people who built it? Like, how do they expect me to use it? Because sure, like, you can always hack something together and make it work, but what are the semantically, like, what are the kind of the idioms that the designers are expecting us to use, and like when we start building stuff versus just how do we hack it together to make it work?
That's a big question right there. I think the short answer to this is listen to your IDE. If you do something dumb, it'll probably tell you. That's once again the great thing, that if you're both the tool vendor and you're the programming language vendor, you get really good IDE support. Let me think about if I can conjure up an example. The problem with trying to figure out bad code is always kind of difficult. Let's see. So we can write some kind of condition. Oh, you can already see, like, okay, if you're writing a bunch of code, so in this case, I hope this is kind of clear. It just sees if the number 1 is not in the list of 1, 2, 3, then it's gonna tell you, like, oh, this if has an empty body, right? Like, these kind of little hints, you'll see in a bunch of situations. Let me try to conjure up something else here, maybe. So let's say that we have a get random number, just like a function, and that returns 4. We'll adjust the return type appropriately. So
4 is definitely a random number. I like it.
Yes. Chosen by throw of dice. I'm stealing that from a certain webcomic. Now we can write something like, okay, we have val my number equals get random number, and then we say, like, okay, if my number is 1, then 1. Else if my number is 2, print 2.
Can we go all the way to 10?
Sure, it's keep it nice and inconsistent. Something like this. I don't know. And you can you can kind of see that again. I get like these little wobbles here, and it's gonna tell me, like, this cascade if should be replaced with when. I'm like, okay, what the heck is a when? Well, if I click on this, it gives me this nice little yellow bubble. It tells me, well, how about you replace the if with a when? Well, we click this thing, and all of a sudden it kind of shows us, like, how this code could look next. And this actually triggers the next little wobble. It says, like, oh, this variable declaration could actually be inlined. You're like, well, I guess we'll inline the variable. And, like, these kind of, like, small iterations is how you end up with code that's a lot more kind of Kotlin-like. And generally I just like pressing like Alt-Enter on things and seeing if you can do something. So because that shows me my context action. So here, I can remove the braces. Well, I guess we can just do that here. I guess that's already a bit nicer again.
I mean, I learned a ton about .NET from ReSharper in Visual Studio.
Yeah.
Giving me all sorts of optimizations.
It's the same thing here. So very, very similar. And if you're coming from Java, which is kind of a special case, I don't know. I'm not a Java developer, so I'll apologize for what's about to happen.
Just to clarify as well, right? You can have intermixed Kotlin and Java. Is that right?
Not just that, but also if we have some kind of Java class, and then we have like getter and setters for this thing. What you can actually do is so let's say you are a Java developer and you actually know what you're doing. Yeah. You can always go to Tools Kotlin, and then is it Tools Kotlin? Actually, we can just press Shift, and then we say Convert, and that gives us a bunch of different options, including Convert Java file to Kotlin file. And we have this really clever app.
What?
Yeah, that's just gonna look at the code that we have. Okay, maybe there's some other code that needs correcting. And it's like, okay, this is the Kotlin version of the same class. So I guess we can now call it Kotlin car. And that's about it. Like,
So you had a getter and a setter, and
yeah,
what happened to them? You don't need them now. This is a public property, and I can go change it.
exactly.
didn't-
So since this is a var property,
Mm-hmm.
you can change it just directly. So let me actually implement. Let's just get rid of this, and let's get rid of the syntax error I just introduced. So val my car equals Kotlin car. We implement that, and then if we do my car, you can see that this is just it's a property on the thing that we can set. It's all good. In fact, I think we can also. So here's one funny thing. I always forget the syntax for this. We can also override the getter with some kind of other function. I think we could just do that, for example. But then, it probably needs to be val. So in theory, if you want to, you can also have you can still override the getters and setters. It just looks a little bit different.
So what's the difference between a val and a var? Is a val like
Yeah.
a const that can't be changed?
Exactly. So val, the L comes from final, I guess. So it can't be changed.
Okay.
So that's a read-only one, whereas a var you can reassign. Like those are.
So then
those are big differences.
so I've built my app with Kotlin. What do I need to run it? Like, do I need like a JRE to run it? Is it all sort of like is it Java compatible in the sense of like it compiles down to Java, or does it what does it compile down to? Like, how do we eventually get code?
So it compiles. So let's not talk about Android in this context because that's a whole different ball game. Like Android
Sure.
has its own compiler infrastructure. Generally, looking at Kotlin, the Kotlin compiler emits JVM bytecode. So to any kind of Java runtime environment, it's gonna look the same as if you had written it in Java.
Nice.
Okay.
The way that we usually get things to run is with Gradle. That's kind of the build system which has been established. Of course, usually you don't write this kind of stuff yourself. You just go to like file new project, then you select like Kotlin and you say like, oh, I want a console application.
Right.
And you select like your project JDK, and that's about it. But yeah, so if you're in the IDE, you can always just press like the little green button, the play button. That's gonna run your application. It's not gonna do much in this case.
And you can only press the run button if you're in the main, right? So you need an entry point for your Kotlin app.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
So by default, this is like your entry point.
Yeah.
And alternatively, if you have the application plugin installed and you have a main method set up, which some frameworks they do that for you, you can also just go to the terminal and you can just say like Gradle run. Yeah. So, but like the Gradle build system is actually quite powerful. I would have to say. It's quite complicated for newcomers, I think, but it really pays off. Kind of
So
learning
there's a steep learning curve to get started and set up, and then once you're there.
Yeah, but honestly, you can get kind of far without touching the Gradle file. And actually, if you notice this, my Gradle file actually ends in .kts, which is called, so that's Kotlin script, which means I'm writing Kotlin code in this configuration file to configure my build, which is kind of nice.
Oh,
that is nice.
Imagine MS Build with support for C#.
I think you're looking for Nuke build, right? I think that's built by my colleague Matthias, also from JetBrains, and that one also provides a C# DSL for C# projects.
So essentially, I'm gonna probably sound silly saying this, but I mean it's essentially like a preprocessor. It's like SAS or less on CSS files, right?
Kind of. So the way that I think it's a bit, maybe it's a bit too deep to go into Gradle right now. But essentially, you kind of describe your build in the context of a Kotlin domain-specific language, which is just a fancy way of saying we have these cool calling conventions so that you can put blocks behind variables and make it look kind of nice. and that's gonna evaluate. It's gonna figure out how to build your project, and then it's just gonna run it.
Very nice.
So yeah, it's a type of preprocessor.
No, that's cool. So if I'm coming from a world where, yeah, like I go to my IDE or I go to a CLI and I do like, .NET New Console, for example. I just want to build a console app. Nothing crazy, nothing exciting. Just a console app that goes and, makes some HTTP calls or, maybe pulls in a few libraries or something to say call an API or call a protected API or whatever.
Yeah. So generally, I assume that sorry, I kind of cut you off there. Please
No,
finish
okay.
the question.
No. Like, I'm thinking like if I'm gonna like as soon as we're done, if I go and I've got IntelliJ installed and I've got to do some work this afternoon on making API calls, for example, to an API, which seems like a fairly straightforward task.
Yeah.
What's it going to take?
That's
What does
true.
it take for me to do that?
So so you just want to do client stuff, or you also want to do like you want to do like server stuff?
Yeah,
Let me
eventually we'll do server stuff for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so let me just pop open a project that I have where some of this stuff is configured, so that I don't have to like pick it out. So the way that, again, I'm kind of biased. There's a bunch of different projects which allow you to do this kind of stuff. Two of the most interesting ones I think in the space right now are Ktor. That one we build ourselves. Ktor is kind of a split set of server and client components, meaning that you can as you can see, you can build like a short little server which just says, okay, on the slash route respond with some text, but also unfortunately not on the front page. It also comes with a bunch of clients where you can just say, okay, let's do a client.get and give us a response. And another alternative from some other folks is HTTP4K. Has a little bit of a different API, but at the end of the day, it's kind of similar. It allows you to do HTTP stuff from the server side, or it allows you to do it from the client side.
Okay.
And for to get going with these kind of things, hopefully there's usually, let's see. So Ktor has a start Ktor thing where you can just kind of click it together. If you've done Spring before, that might look kind of familiar. So
yeah. we have a couple of questions from the audience. Chamber Games is asking, does Kotlin have support for something like promises, tasks, and futures? Like async await kind of a syntax to allow you to be more relevant to current times, I guess.
Okay, great question, honestly. So Kotlin has its own concept for concurrency, and that's called coroutines. Let me try to kind of build maybe an isolated example for this for a second here. So what we have, let's assume that we have a function do something expensive. And that calculates something. So usually what would happen in an IO bound world is that you have some kind of delay that comes from somewhere. I don't know, takes a second or so, and then you return expensive. I don't know. Okay, so this right now, if we just assume this is your implementation, that we would say like, okay, if we do this, our program is gonna take one second to complete. Like this is gonna take 1 second. And if we do this twice in a row, it's gonna take 2 seconds. But we essentially have this concept of coroutines, which again you'll probably be able to notice. I hope that it's imported. Yep. And we have, for example, this async builder. Where if we do this, you can quite quickly see. Oops. You can see that this creates a deferred, which is just a fancy word for a future. And then if we to do this, actually, we need to tell our compiler, hey, this function might be doing something that's long running. So we mark it as suspend. Again, this is kind of, if you've done async await, I think you can kind of tell some parallels here.
Yep.
You get this nice little information that, hey, what you're doing here might be suspending some kind of thread for a while.
And I love that the ID is actually telling you that. It's a great pointer.
It's lovely. Another one of my favorite features in this regard is that if you do something that's recursive, it also gives you like a little twisty icon to tell you that you're doing recursive calls.
Nice.
Which is lovely and helps you sometimes if you we said it before, naming is hard sometimes. So sometimes if you accidentally call yourself, that can kind of save your life every once in a while. And then of course if you have this function and you allow the context, then you can do like an await here and a b.await. And yeah, which means that these two things will now be executed in parallel, and the whole thing will return after 1 second. I mean, we can actually try that. Try compiling that.
So what's the significance of global scope here?
So this is a quick simplification. Generally, coroutines have this concept of structured concurrency, meaning that you can spawn new scopes yourself, which kind of control the lifetime of how long your asynchronous applications run. It's kind of strange to think about this in an abstract way. So let's take a concrete example. You have an application that has a page in it, or like a view, let's call it. And that view does a bunch of like network calls in the background, and they take forever. And your user gets frustrated, and it closes the page again. Now,
right.
in usually, I don't know if you have like Go routines or if you have some kind of other async await, you might be leaking those asynchronous tasks. They might still try to complete. They might still to download those long running tasks. With coroutine scopes, you can kind of take all the coroutines that belong to a certain view, for example, and when you destroy the view, you just say, okay, this scope now gets cancelled, and all the tasks that you've spawned and all the children of those tasks and the children of those tasks, they'll automatically get cancelled. They'll automatically get cleaned up. So
okay.
that's kind of the whole idea of this scoping.
Oh, that's cool.
Nice.
And there's actually also another fun thing. These builders, they also accept, we can see it up here, a context, which could be, for example, dispatches.io. If we import this one. And now you can even specify where, like on which kind of thread pool your application should run. So if you're saying, okay, I need to make sure that my stuff happens on the UI thread, then maybe you want to run it on main. But if you're doing a lot of I/O, maybe you want to run it on I/O. Like all these kind of like little things allow you. Like coroutines is unfortunately not a topic where like a 10-minute introduction is going to be very easy, I think. But it's a super powerful mechanism.
Yeah. Well, I think like in our, and at least in the .NET world, you know, there were some pretty big pushes over the last few years that, you know, there's a vast majority of APIs now are asynchronous, or they have asynchronous options.
Yep. And
you know, I seem to remember at one point, and I can't remember which platform it was, but there was a certain part where they said, you know, if it's longer than like a 40 millisecond call or something, you're going to end up with an async alternative. And so there are really kind of two parts to that, and one is, okay, well, how do I use them, right? And then how do I know how they're going to execute? You know, like we use something like you have an async function, a suspend function, and you await that functions, and then instead of having to write callbacks and do all that drama, you kind of get this serial execution the way you would expect it, provided that you're doing that awaiting. To say, hey, you know, essentially wait on the return of this task, or wait on the return of this. And the problem is it gets people in trouble if they don't fully sort of, if there's not like a good understanding of what's going to execute when. This sounds like your expectations as a developer should be quite similar.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, there's no talking away the fact that the moment you add concurrency to your project, you add complexity. Like that's a fact. But with coroutines, you kind of get given some mechanisms which make it a bit easier to reason about this kind of stuff. For example, something that I haven't shown off yet is if we have another function, I don't know, do something else, and that's also a suspend function, and I don't know what that does. I don't really care. From the context of another suspend function, I can always just call that. See, let's not do the recursive call. Let's do the proper call. Like I can call that, and if I want to, like I can call that like repeat. I can also call that like 3 times if I want to. Inside of like my suspending functions themselves, I usually write code that looks sequential, and that is like it's quite powerful because these things, they don't need extra annotations. I do not need to think about like async await. It's kind of comfortable, especially together with the IDE support that we get.
So then essentially, if I am awaiting within my synchronous code, like if I'm awaiting inside of my main thread, essentially, any other downstream, suspendable functions or any other sort of downstream work that's going to happen that's asynchronous. It's all of that entire like these 3 do something else calls. Are all 3 of those now going to be? Are they going to be executed in parallel, as in the task has been queued and it's gone into execute, or are they going to run like one after the other by virtue of the fact that it's an asynchronous method inside of another asynchronous method?
Yeah. So in this case, they would run one after the other. But if you want to kick them off simultaneously, we can make this an extension function. Give me just 1 second here. We can launch these in parallel, and this is pretty much like fire and forget.
Okay. Okay.
And yeah, they'll just get started.
Okay. Cool.
So now these 3 would run in parallel. Wondering why this is complaining right now. Oh, because I'm.
No, it's okay.
Suspend now. Anyway, yeah.
Because that's one of the things that like that is somewhat of a difference, and it's like something that we would have to look out for as we sort of venture out into Kotlin. And typically I would have to await that call, for example, like that do something else. I'd have to do an await on that. So, and I think Chambers Games says what I'm trying to say in very few actually correct words, which is that suspend functions are implicitly awaiting the other suspend functions. That's what it seems like.
Yeah, pretty much. Exactly.
Okay, that's super cool. Cool.
Like it's the nice thing is that essentially you can take sequential code that was blocking beforehand, and you can make the parts that are that would usually be blocking you where you're waiting. For example, you can wrap those in kind of these coroutine calls, and you get a really nice API out of it, which has high performance but still kind of reads quite easily, I think.
Okay. So this is. You mentioned that this was. Is this a Ktor app? This one that you have open right now, or is this just? Console? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So this is a Ktor app.
So like in the .NET world and ASP.NET, we have ASP.NET. I mean, I'm sure somebody out there has written like an alternate HTTP framework for .NET. I have no idea what it is.
There are plenty out there.
But I can't, and I don't know any sort of specific inside baseball or numbers, but my suspicion would be the vast majority of folks who are writing a .NET web app are using ASP.NET to do it. right?
Mm-hmm.
So KTOR is produced by JetBrains too.
Yeah.
The HTTP for K, you said that was a community project. I mean,
Yep.
of the the sort of frameworks that are out there, the frameworks that are available for building web apps, is there like a clear big one right now, like the one that people would use because it's either particularly easy, it's easy to get started with, it's super powerful, sort of whatever?
Yeah. So the answer to that is Spring. It's
Okay.
It's Spring. That's
Okay, so
I mean that's from a historical reason it makes a lot of sense because with Kotlin we strive to have 100% Java interoperability. So the biggest Java thing kind of naturally became the biggest Kotlin thing as well. And the folks at Spring are also doing a lot of work to support Kotlin specific constructs and make it really nice and easy to use from Kotlin as well. So yeah, that's kind of the big one. I think we actually did we have a YouTube series on youtube.com/Kotlin, which targets specifically, I think we call it Springtime in Kotlin. And yeah, exactly. From my colleague Anton, you can check this out. It kind of talks through how you can write Spring app with Kotlin as well, which I think is quite nice.
Nice.
But of course, it is kind of still this heavy beast in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what we've heard, and I've heard there. I guess I don't know if has it always been modularized, or is it getting more modularized, where you don't necessarily need the full Spring, and you can grab the pieces that you need?
I mean that it is pretty modular, but comparing it to KTOR, for example, it's just it relies heavily on some constructs that are typical in Java. For example, annotations,
Okay.
right? The little things with the at sign that you put everywhere.
Yeah.
If I scroll through this example app, you can see there's not a single at sign anywhere. Because instead, what we make use of is these so-called Kotlin DSLs again. So we have these fancy functions. Like if you just look at this, I think it's very reminiscent of some other like micro frameworks in, I don't know, like Python, maybe Flask, or like Sinatra and Ruby. But what really happens here is that these like all of these, they're just regular functions. They just happen to have this fancy convention where if the last parameter of your function is another function, so is a code block, then instead of, let me see if I can actually refactor this. Instead of writing it like this, which I guess checks out. So instead of just passing it as a function parameter, you get to move it outside, which makes it look like, hey, we have a function here that's kind of in the language.
Ah, interesting. Okay, that's cool. So then, if I'm using Spring, do I still end up in a world where I have to do all those sort of annotations, or are there these shims that are going to help me use them and not litter my code with annotations, for example, or any other these other any of these other sort of Java-esque conventions? Like, are any of those sort of hidden? And I'm assuming that takes developer work to do that. Somebody's got to do it, right?
Yeah. So generally you would still use the same annotations, and I think that also makes a lot of sense, just from the perspective of, well, if you have a mixed code base, you don't want to just be one half be the well documented Java Spring code and the other one be the Wild West Kotlin code using some kind of crazy some kind of crazy constructs that no one has ever heard of before.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So then obviously, like, we encounter Spring security relatively frequently.
Sorry, very very quick question. Did you just lose my my video feed?
We did. We just lost your screen.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
Oh no. Yeah. So I can tell you what happened. I have this wonderful tool which closes tabs for me when I haven't touched them for 20 minutes. Because I'm the type of person who has way too many tabs open usually. So let me just
awesome.
lock that and rejoin. Yeah, it's awesome when it works, but sometimes it becomes a little bit over eager. I think that should do it again.
Okay, yeah, we're back. We see your screen again now.
Great.
So I know that.
Sorry.
No, it's all good. So we encounter a lot of Spring security, obviously, for things like authentication, authorization, and we've seen that exists in sort of in the KTOR world, that there is at least something there to sort of support, getting people signed in and sort of handling that sort of thing. But when it comes to sort of like application security and the like, I mean, how much of that is sort of, if I'm new to Kotlin, I'm coming in from Java, for example, how much of that's going to be like, is that going to be familiar to me, like the way that I secure a Java app, for example, the way that I harden certain things, or the way that I like handle building secure software, like. I assume, because this ultimately ends up as Java bytecode, that most of the work that I'm going to do in Java, I'm also going to do here to do this, to sort of achieve the same thing, right?
From the perspective of a user now, or in the sense of like hardening your binary somehow?
Well, I mean more like the patterns and the practices and the things like that I would go through to look for certain things in my code, or to like, if I'm coming from Java, where I would be familiar, right?
Yeah. So this is kind of again, it really depends on your use case, right? If you're someone who's building like a small web service or something, you might find that, hey, we can just whip up a quick HTTP endpoint with KTOR. That works really well. That goes fast, and that starts up about, I don't know, 10 times faster than a Spring application. But if you are relying on, like, okay, I want to build something with a large team that has certain requirements, and we want to use as much as possible, like out of the box, you're probably gonna have a better life with Spring. Like, very, very clearly. I have to admit, I'm not a Spring developer myself. Like, I mostly fiddle around with KTOR. As a developer advocate, I'm like a professional hello worldster, right? So, so they're always small applications.
Sure, yeah.
Usually nothing too big. But yeah, so Kotlin is a language. I mean, completely doesn't care what framework you use. The developers of the framework might get like their feelings hurt if you don't use whichever one, but.
Sure.
KTOR is a lot more like bring your own beer, bring your own pizza, bring your own features. Like, you're gonna have an easier, if you're just saying, okay, I need a specific, like, I want the canonical way on how to integrate my MongoDB with my application. You're probably gonna have an easier time with Spring, because it's like an explored space. They probably just have the plugin or the connector ready. Whereas with KTOR, it's gonna be like, okay, like, here's your endpoints, here's the set of features we have. You can bring everything else. Like, you can use a standalone library, whatever.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That's cool. So it's sort of like, I don't want to. I really absolutely hate the term batteries included. It's more of a batteries available, right? I mean, because you have the entirety of the Java ecosystem available to you. It's just a matter of using what you need when you need it. And I would imagine, and maybe I'm wrong here, but is there when I'm using, say I'm using a Java library, it's like, maybe I'm almost kind of thinking of like maybe something kind of like a TypeScript, right? Where you end up in a place of like, well, I've got TypeScript, and so a developer's going to written TypeScript like typings and bindings, right? So that when I'm building a TypeScript app, they've written a root JavaScript library that's actually doing all the work, but they've got these bindings that make it sort of TypeScript aware, so that I can get the advantage of IntelliSense and all the other things, auto completion, whatever. So if I'm building a Java library, can I build like a Kotlin interface or some sort of interop, like assembly in between the two, so that I can have a more sort of Kotlin friendly or Kotlin-esque way to interact with it? Or
So let me actually try to show you this again in the sample of we'll do another Java car because we haven't had enough of those yet. So we'll have some seats and we'll have I don't know, a string make and then we construct a constructor and
So
then
there's a question. Does Kotlin compile to native?
to native what? To native JVM bytecode? Absolutely. To
I wonder if it's for mobile. I guess.
yeah. So we actually have something called Kotlin native, which is another target. So we generally this is gonna be a bit of a tangent here, but
Right.
Kotlin supports this notion of multi-platform programming, and you can see here that we have 3 targets right now for Kotlin. We have Kotlin JVM, which is usually what most people are looking at when they first do Kotlin, because that's just kind of where the ecosystem sits, where you can use JVM code and you can and you emit JVM code. Then there's Kotlin native, which literally just emits native binaries for whatever system you're running on, and with a little bit of work, you can also use native libraries like, I don't know, libcurl or libffi or whatever directly from your Kotlin native code. And then there's Kotlin JS, which I do a lot with, which allows you to write libraries and web applications using Kotlin as well. And of course,
Nice.
they all kind of have their own like little specialties.
Sure.
Like obviously there are some things you can do in JavaScript code. Like, I don't know, you can define an object to just be like, dynamic. The platform probably knows what it is at runtime. That's something you can't do in native code. Like, that's just going to explode. But the answer is you can compile to native code if you want to. There's also Graal VM, which is this currently very popular project of compiling just general JVM code to native code, which
Right.
I believe works in most cases with Kotlin as well.
Oh, that's cool. So sort of like, I guess, sort of like a .NET native for us, right, Christos?
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, compiling down to specific machine code. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, so we have that. That's probably especially relevant if you are looking at, I don't know, if you're doing like serverless and you're really scared about startup time, like 250 milliseconds of JVM startup like makes you go like,
Yeah.
then sure. But generally, like don't underestimate the performance of a JVM if you can afford the little bit of overhead in memory. Like,
Yeah.
speed wise, you're still gonna get quite good results here. So yeah, let me just quickly finish this example. We have a couple getters and setters, and I don't know, we also have a public void change make string other make, and we just say this make equals other make. Okay, so we just have like a Java class which doesn't really do much besides like sit there. And now if we once again we steal ourselves a new Kotlin file, I'm just gonna try to keep as little code on the screen as possible, and we instantiate one of these Java cars. Then first of all, you can see that, okay, the invocation for the seats and for the make, like, that's just as you would have it in Java, or if it was a Kotlin object as well. Let me
Sure.
actually make these private. Otherwise, I feel like it's not going to feel the same. So note that we only have a get seat and set seats here, and get make and set make, but these are private. So what you would not expect me to be able to do is to say j.make equals foo. Right?
Yep.
And if we click on this, or actually, we can even if we just hover over it, we can see that the Kotlin compiler intelligently resolves this to set make.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it automatically inserts parts to your like in your application code to make the interop between Java code and Kotlin code like completely transparent.
Ah, okay. Okay. Well, because that was kind of where I was heading. Is so we've got a library, of course, for interacting with our systems called, ImSal for J. That's our Microsoft authentication libraries, and I've never.
I mean, if you want to, we can try pulling this one in if you like.
Sure.
We can see how it looks like.
Sure. That's a great idea. Let's do that. So, I don't think there are any sort of MSAL. I don't think there's like a, and I think I almost feel like I'm not saying the right thing. So, if I want to build a package, like I want to build an assembly that I want to consume, and I want to write it in Kotlin.
Yeah.
What am I actually producing?
You're a jar file, like with every other Java application as well. Like it's the same publishing mechanisms. You're gonna publish it to the same repositories. It's all the same. We're piggybacking really strongly on the whole Java ecosystem.
Okay.
Like there's no reinvention happening here.
Okay.
Right.
So then,
so
our library.
What's the library called?
MSAL. For J.
For J.
Yep, that is our sort of primary. Okay. That's our primary authentication package, and we're not in a web app, so there are other ways that we can try to use it. There's really one primary way that it gets used, or one sort of primary thing. So yeah, so once you get that pulled in, let's take a look.
Sure. Okay. So since I'm using the Kotlin Gradle DSL, it's gonna look a little bit different. Compile, by the way, in Gradle is deprecated. Someone needs to make a pull request here. Let's copy this. It's msal for J191.
So what's the right way to do it now?
It's implementation.
Oh, just implementation. Okay.
Yes. Or generally, there are some slight nuances, but I have, in all my time of working with Gradle, I have never felt those nuances. So it's probably, probably you're gonna be fine if you just replace it with implementation.
Okay, and so is this one that we're in? Is this a web app or is this a console app? Console app probably be easiest, at least just to see how we would use it.
Whichever one's easiest, then let's treat it as a console app.
Okay, let's do console then. So in MSAL, we have this concept of a public client. We have a concept of a confidential client. All that really means is one of them has a secret and can keep a secret, and the other one can't. Usually, you would use a public client in, say, a mobile app or in a single-page app running in a browser. Usually, use confidential apps that are going to run on servers. So, for us, we'll just do a confidential app, and then. I'm gonna get my MSAL for J pulled up here myself too. So there's
gonna be relying very heavily on your knowledge of this library because I have no idea what we're gonna be doing.
Yep. So let me get to. So essentially, we need to create this new confidential client first. I'm trying to find my initialization stuff for instantiating a new client.
Can I just say confidential client?
Yep. It is called a confidential client application. Yep, that's it. And they use this builder. There's sort of a builder mechanism. So there's a .builder that hangs off of that, and that's going to expect a client ID, which I'll send you one here in a minute. But it's just going to be a string. And then there'll also be a credential that comes as part of that too, which. There's actually something called a client credential factory create from secret.
Is that what I want to do here?
It is, but you could do it in a variable, and we'll reference it. It doesn't have to be in that line, but yeah, that's essentially what it'll be. Your credential will be it's a client credential factory create from secret, and then I'll give you a string secret to use too. Okay, so that is the same one as this one. No, there are two of them.
No, that's a different one. Okay,
yeah. CID and then also the cred. So the cred will be the second thing we pass into the builder.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And then we have and then hanging off of that we have a .authority.
So let's make this a bit more readable.
And then that'll be a string I give you too. Everything's just a string. And then we just need to build it. So .build at the end. So this gives us our client that we can use to go and get tokens for talking to different services or whatever. So I'm gonna go create you one of these right now. But the next thing, or actually, I guess it's fine. I'll go create you one. So I'm gonna go get you a give you a couple. Nothing. If you like some GUIDs, I've got plenty of them. So I'm going to give you a bunch of 32 character GUIDs. So let me get you a new app here, and let's see.
So in the meantime, I'm just gonna quickly create a file called credentials here,
Okay.
and we can actually. So the fun thing is that reading files in Kotlin is quite simple, fortunately. So we can just do this, and then we'll just get the lines out of it.
Okay.
So these are gonna be my creds, and then you'll just let me know the CID.
Yep.
First.
And I just put that in the chat, so you'll have a client ID, and then I'm going to send you a secret that I'm going to delete immediately after, right, as well. So okay, so there's your client ID. Here is the secret in its entirety. I hope that it copied correctly and that it doesn't get butchered by the chat, but that's cool. We'll get that figured out.
Okay.
So now you have the pieces that you need, and then for the authority, I will get you an authority. The authority is really just who's the token, who's the token group or who's the token endpoint that's going to consider you, that's going to be your, that's going to vouch for who you are. So here's the authority you can use. We may have to make a small change to that, but the only thing that's actually a secret is the actual secret that we sent you, but that's fine. So now we've got this client, and usually the way we do this client, and this will be a little bit different. So hanging off of that client application object, we'll have an acquire token. I believe it's acquire token for app on that confidential.
After the build.
No. Well, so the build's going to give you an actual object. So the build will set C to something, and then we've got an acquire token. So these are a little bit different. We don't necessarily need an acquire token sign. Let's see. So msal for J.
If they're called get acquire token or something, then they'll automatically be renamed here.
Let's see. So it may just be, they may all just be overrides of the, I wonder if they're all just going to be overrides of the acquire token method. So let me take a quick look here. So we've got our stuff, We're going to build our app, and then we are going to acquire token with some parameters. Let's see. So under acquire token, so those are on behalf of parameters. We definitely don't want that one. We've got client credential parameters. Those are the ones that we need.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to create an instance of those, I suppose.
Via factory, or like these.
Of course,
can we do this directly?
Of course, there's a factory. Let's see. What's the best way for us? Because essentially the thing we have to build are what are called the scopes, which is just a list of the permissions that we need. So let's create a new client credential parameters object.
Via the builder, I assume.
Yes, we're gonna do client credential parameters dot build. Yeah, there's our builder. And then that's looking for a list of strings. So we only have one string. So whatever the best way to get an array of strings in there is, I can give you the string we're going to use.
Sure. So I'm interested that this, it actually takes a set, but we can just give a set directly. Sure, why not?
Oh, okay, cool. So the scope that we're going to use is user.read.all. And that's the only scope that we need. So then do a build on those on that builder object, and let's see if we get a token first. Can you just print the return of acquire token? There should be, I think there's an access token object that hangs off of that.
Sure. So we can. Sorry. Well, let's see. What does this return?
A completable future.
Okay.
So what do we do with a completable future?
That's actually we probably awaited, huh?
That's what I would
we get
think.
it.
Yeah, I would imagine we would have to await that. Or join? Does that join us
I'm
back?
I'm currently just thinking if the give me 1 second here.
Is it complete?
Did it kill my connection again? Oh
No,
no.
no, I don't think so. Well,
I think so.
unless you're not moving anything.
Okay, never mind. Okay, it was just closing Twitch chat. Sorry.
Okay.
I just saw a window vanish on my left screen. And that kind of scared me. So I think there should be. Okay, let's actually see. I'm thinking if there's an adapter inside Kotlin coroutines where we can literally just tell it suspend until this function is done.
Ah,
So let
okay.
me see here. Integration with JDK8 completable future.
So while you're looking for that, someone Chamber Games is asking: Is Kotlin using its own kind of package manager behind the scenes, or is it all based on Maven?
It's all based on Maven.
Good.
So it's it's Gradle, which again resolves to Maven Central.
Yeah.
But yeah. Hey, look at that! We actually have. If we make this a suspend function, look at that. We can just await the completed future. That's kind of neat.
That's awesome.
So yeah, now again we just write. I don't know what does it give to back an auth result?
It's called an auth result. So that auth result will have an access token and some other data hanging off of it. It looks like it looks like there's actually a .get that hangs off of that completable future.
That might very well be the case as well, but let's see what .get does in theory. Waits if necessary for this future to complete and then returns its result. I mean, I guess that also would work, but now that we already have this nice example of being able to await it, why not await it? It's
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel that it almost feels like like is it the .resolve for async await in .NET, which is not particularly clean. So it's better to await. And
yeah, so the other one that we actually had here with get was actually a blocking method. So
yeah. See.
I mean, yeah. Oh, I guess we can just do that.
Yeah.
Hey.
So then, if you run this, can you just print out the token and see if we get it?
Yeah.
The auth result?
Do the access token that hangs off of that. Yep.
Cool. Let's try. Fingers crossed. Also, fingers crossed that my machine will be able to compile this while streaming.
Oh, look at that. Utilization is going up.
Mm-hmm. That's multi-core compilation and everything.
We got to get somebody. So you're gonna have to help us find somebody, Sebastian, who builds Android apps with Kotlin, because we've had a request. We've had multiple requests actually to get somebody to come on and build a Kotlin Android app for us. So we gotta find the right person to do it. Okay, so there's something about our scope that it does not like. So let's see here.
This would have been the scope, right?
Yes, that is the scope. So let's see. So we have client credentials parameters, right? And then we've got our builder. And then we've got our scope. Oh, you know what? I gave you the wrong scope. That would be why. Just do I know.
Go read, right?
Do https://graph graph.microsoft.com
graph.microsoft.com
/.default.
The default, yeah.
Oh, .default like this?
Yep.
No.
Let's run that.
Yeah.
Yep. So the
Do you
scope
want to
for
explain to people? Do you want to explain to people why we always fall into that trap? Because I mess it up sometimes as well when you're on confidential clients.
so we did get our access token. In fact, if you take that token out, we can go over to jwt.ms and we can take a look at what's in it. We'll make sure that we got the right token. But
Sure.
the .default scope is it's essentially for clients that don't have interactivity, and in this case, this isn't an interactive client because it's a client credential, so it's just essentially a console app or a daemon or something's not running somewhere. .default says any permissions that you have that have been configured are the permissions that I need to get. So you don't really ask for a specific scope. You say, give me all of the permissions that have been requested or that have been configured for this specific resource.
Yes.
So I had to add that users.read.all, and if you look down there in the roles, you'll see user.read.all in that list.
I just put the blog post that you wrote, the fantastic blog post that you wrote a couple of months ago about the .default and when to use it.
Yeah. So and then it goes back to the V1. So for the people who've used Azure AD in the past, it goes back to the V1 behavior for Azure AD, which is you couldn't say I need a token for just user.read or for a very specific scope. Instead, your tokens were for a specific resource, so the graph as a whole, instead of graph user.read. So you had to configure: do I need user.read? Do I need mail.read, etc. And then whatever that configuration was, we called it static consent. Whatever that configuration was, a user had to consent to up front. If you've got a piece of functionality somewhere deep in the bowels of your application that only 2% of your users are going to use, you don't want to ask for them for permission to do that until you actually need to, right? Because then you're going to end up in a weird place. But yeah, so we get our access token, which is great. We could take this access token and go make an HTTP call. So if we want to take this access token and go just make like a really easy HTTP call, what kind of what kind of client do we have just to go make a call with this token in the header?
So in this project, I have a Kato HTTP client actually already pre-configured, I think. Let me just yoink that from over here.
Is that the technical term?
That's the technical term.
Is it a verb? To yoink?
It is. Yeah. So again, this is just something that I pre-configured beforehand because it requires like four Gradle artifacts that I didn't want to add.
Okay.
But yeah. So what this does is it gives us an HTTP client based on an engine called CIO or coroutines IO. We've heard that word before today. So it uses the same underlying technology. It has a bunch of nice features for serializing, deserializing JSON, and it sends a browser user agent. So that, I don't know, to be covert.
Awesome. So the one thing we need it to do is to also send an authorization header with the value of that token that we get when we run.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's try.
All right, cool.
So what are we doing? We're getting or?
Yep, we'll do a get, and we're gonna do a get on https:// graph.microsoft.com /v1.o /users. That's fine. We
does the URL string come automatically, or did you have to type it? Like, does it know to cast it to URL string, or did you have to type it
so yeah, these are our name hints that we can get automatically. I'm not sure if we can disable them if we want to, but
no,
yeah.
No, I don't want to disable. I just find it very interesting that it does it for you, so you know what kind of types you're using there, right?
It's my most loved feature in all of IntelliJ. We actually have this for pretty much all languages. If you go onto appearances and then, editor, they're called inlay hints down here, and you can see we got them for like 10 languages. And then if you go to Kotlin, there's like 4 different categories. I have all of them turned on.
So
it's quite nice.
Is this an ID only feature? Does it have to do anything with the compiler or anything else? Just a hint for you to know?
No, but if you want to have this in your language as well, we also allow named arguments. So you can also write it like this. But then it's actual text.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so I'm not sure what we're gonna get back, so I guess we're just gonna get a string.
We'll get some JSON
now,
back.
Well, I mean, what is JSON if not a string, right? And now let me try to quickly see if I can find some. Hey, there's a headers block. That seems kind of useful. Let's see what this headers builder allows me to do. I'm sure I can add like a.
Can we add a new one?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the hope.
Yeah.
I'm just looking for again. Config as header builders. Okay. Wait, can we? We can probably make it even easier because we just need one header, right?
Yeah.
That's it, just the one.
Okay. Then.
Well, I guess it depends on whether or not it'll automatically put extra ones like an accepts header and stuff like that. But
Oh, that's a good point.
we'll start with
So
authorization.
this is gonna be what authorization bearer or what?
Yep, bearer space the token.
And then. So we can do this fancy syntax, which is it's string interpolation. But if we use if we use these little parens, we can actually put complete,
Sweet.
yeah, even complex stuff in here.
I can't
Okay.
live without string interpolation these days. Can't believe that we did it different ways in the past.
Right.
Stringed up
So-
format. Okay.
So let's have a look at what comes back, I guess.
Sure, yeah. Let's take a look at it. We should get
And
back a
then-
list of users.
Okay. Just so that we kind of get an idea of what we're working with.
Dun, 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 dun.
I know we need
I have
the...
high hopes.
Okay. There we go. Look at that. So there's our OData,
Hey,
and there's
Cool.
our
nice.
array of users. So yeah, we get the value property has an array of users in it.
Nice. So I think if I can probably open a new Scratch file with JSON format. We can put that in here, press this button, and now we can kind of see at least what our result
Yep.
is. So again, a fancy feature in IntelliJ, Scratch files allow you to just create like a throwaway file if you just want
That's
to put
awesome.
something in there.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Okay. And now we get a bunch of data, I guess.
Yeah, it's just a bunch. It's just all the users, and it's the 78 different versions of myself that live in my directory. So,
You, yourself, and I. That is a very
Okay, I see.
yeah. So no, this is just Graph is our sort of main entry point to all the Microsoft APIs, like your user directory, your Office subscriptions with stuff like your Office 365 mail and your calendar and all that sort of different stuff.
Okay.
But it's just sort of this. It's this always present API
Okay,
that
nice.
we use for a lot of stuff, just so that we don't have to go stand one up. So yeah, I mean, we can get a token with specific set of scopes. We can use himself for J, and we use it the way that you would expect to, like in a normal thing, and but we can still do it in Kotlin, and we can get data back. So I mean, checks all the boxes.
Yeah, I mean, if we still have some time, we can try parsing these into actual Kotlin objects. if
Yeah,
you wanna
sure.
try.
There may
So,
even be a.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. So I have something called the Kotlin X serializer already pre-configured. Again, just for simplicity's sake, but I'm just gonna shout them out because they're amazing folks. Again, from the actual Kotlin core team, they build a compiler plugin which allows you to do serialization and deserialization of JSON, protobuf, CBOR, HOCON, properties, all of these kind of things across all of our platforms without any runtime overhead. So like they can pre-configure everything. They are not doing some kind of weird reflection stuff. So they're a lot more comfortable than using like JSON, for example. And actually, while we're here, we can have a look at I think it's called Ignore Unknown Fields. Hope. Let's just give it a guess, because I don't. So, the only funny thing about this is that unknown keys is what it's called, I think. Man, it is struggling right now. Let me just give me just a second here. I need to pop this open.
We're gonna have to go buy a machine to send to people. Like, just buy some
Yeah.
like 50-pound laptop that's like sounds like it's about to take off, but it's amazing. Send it to people's houses. Like, all right, here you go. Here's your.
So this does take a JSON configuration. I'm a bit confused why it's refusing mine right now. Required JSON found unit. What do you mean? Wait. Don't. Man. My whole IDE is dying, so I can't really tell if it's my fault or if it's the IDE's fault. Give me just 2 seconds here.
Sure.
Yeah. Take your time.
I hear lots of thumps upstairs. I don't know what's going on.
Someone's running all excited.
Yeah, I guess so.
The fact that it
Dead.
I think we're missing an import. This was the problem.
Aha.
Ignore unknown keys equals true. Okay, and now I think we can just pass this config into our serializer. Ah, there we go. Imports, the downfall of many a great man. Yeah. By the way, note that when I write things, first of all, I can just write top-level declarations. It's a whole different story whether you should write top-level declarations for everything.
No judgment. No judgment. This is
yeah,
a safe
but-
space.
Exactly,
Bring
but
the
you can.
coding, like-
So even now that we write like the model of our application, we don't even have to go to a different file. We can just start typing.
Very nice.
So we can mark a class. We can actually mark a data class, and we call this I don't know, response. That's probably a name that's already used. Graph response.
Okay.
And this is gonna have. Probably need to split this to the right so that I can kind of get a rough idea. Yeah, and now we can pretty much just map the individual fields, because what we're gonna do later is we're literally just gonna tell our HTTP client return an object of this type, and you can see that immediately our result changes type to graph response, which means that we'll be able to access the fields here. So we'll have something called value, I guess, which is gonna be a list of, what are these, users?
Yeah, users.
Okay, so I guess we can just ignore the data context for now.
Yeah, that's
and
just
now
for-
we, of course.
Yeah, that's just for OData, which is.
And by the
Yeah,
way,
man.
there's a very comprehensive set of SDKs. So if you want to work with an SDK in your favorite language, then you don't have to manually try to deserialize JSON to that. You can use the Java SDK for MS Graph, and that would simplify your life a lot more.
Okay.
And to make things more complex, maybe I shouldn't mention that, but the Graph SDK comes with its own authentication provider, which means that you don't have to use mSalv4j if you don't want to. You can just directly, if you're only going to interact, for example, with Graph, then you can use the Graph SDK and its own token provider to do that. But in most cases, you will have an app where your user needs to come in and authenticate anyway, and then they may call Graph. So that's where mSalv4j comes in.
Okay. So now we're just gonna build like the minimal example, because I guess the most interesting part would just be the display name. So we can just do like res.value, and then we can take another fancy function, like we could do like join to string, for example, and we can join this whole thing up, and we'll, I don't know, separate them with like 3 dashes or something.
Okay.
Very nice.
And then hopefully, if everything goes well, now our client should know that whatever comes back has the format of this graph response, which is going to have a value field, which is going to have a display name in each one of the users. So I'm very much crossing my fingers here.
Okay. I'm excited to see what happens. There they are.
Yeah, we got a user with display name. User with display name. Hey, look at that.
Yeah. There are a lot of them. They just all happen to be the same physical person. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have put that on those on different lines or something. But yeah.
No, that's super cool. So I mean, it's not very. It's not. I do like I mean, for just like trying to get something out quickly, or like for exploring a library or exploring an API, like being able to just do these top level things quickly is. You know, it's really nice. Like I think that, and somebody mentioned that in these you can just run code in these Scratch files or these Scratch places too. Is that a thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we even have a REPL for Kotlin as well. So
nice. Okay.
If you want to do that, I'm not sure what the scope. I think that might actually, let's see here. An illegal reflective access has occurred. So yeah, you can define things and then again, I don't know, do weird things, and hopefully if the I think that just restarted in the middle of my session. Let's try that again. Let's see here. I mean, it pretends that it's ready, but I'm not gonna lie, the REPL's kind of flaky sometimes.
Yeah. Almost like notebooks, right? Like notebooks were always cool, right? So, so hang on, we do have a question. When should we use? When to use Spring Security versus SimSal for J? So, there's some interesting parts to that. Typically, in stuff like Spring Security, so Spring Security will have an authentication bit in it, right? So it'll have a way to sign a user into your app. And if you look at, say, .NET, you don't use IMSAL to log a user in with .NET, right? It's all the ASP.NET, OpenID Core or OpenID Connect libraries that are already there. So those get configured, and then those are the things that go and actually sign you in. But then when it's time to go get a token, that's what you use IMSAL for. So at its purest, IMSAL is a token acquisition library. With Spring, it'll be similar. So like Spring offers authentication plugins, and that sort of like wires up the whole framework for session cookies and the fact that you signed in and all that sort of stuff. So it would be similar where if you just need to sign a user in, Spring authentication would handle that for you, and you don't need IMSAL. If you need to go get tokens, then you would sign a user in with Spring, and you'd use IMSAL to go get tokens for them. The one part to that is that there's one bit of interactivity where after the user signs in, IMSAL needs to help with going to go get tokens. That's going to be the key, because in order for IMSAL's cache to get loaded up so that you can get to that token a little bit later on, IMSAL will be the thing that has to go redeem that redeem the authorization code, at which point it has to hand that back to Spring and say, okay, cool, here's how we log, here's the user that we need to log in, so that Spring will write a cookie and the user won't have to re-authenticate every time through. So, yeah. Anyway, cool. So this is cool. I mean, this doesn't even take that long. It's like 15 minutes really, just to get our client to go make an HTTP call, get our token, and parse it out. Like it's pretty clean. It's pretty simple. I like it.
Yeah. That's kind of what made me fall in love with Kotlin in the first place, is that I can just be super productive with it and kind of explore things quite easily.
So what did you have like a preferred platform or language before Kotlin that you used?
Yeah, so it's like I think the story is kind of similar for a bunch of people. I started writing Java, and I was of the volition like, I want to write everything in Java, like everything. I'm telling you, like command line utilities. I'm like, I don't see why I wouldn't write those in Java. Like, that's sure. I mean, it's the language I know. It seems to have a nice ecosystem. Why not? And then at some point, I was forced to write Swift for like 1.5 years. And Swift is a nice and modern language. Like, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But then at some point, I was like, well, I want to do server-side stuff again. I want to do stuff for things that aren't iPhones again. And I wanted to go back to the JVM. But at this point, like, Java had kind of been spoiled for me because I got used to all these modern things, like, I don't know, like null safety or just like really embracing higher order functions, all these kind of things. The fact that nullability is being handled properly, all of this. And I just looked for another language, and when I found Kotlin, it was literally love at first sight. Like,
Nice.
no joke.
Nice.
And
That's awesome.
yeah, that's pretty much the whole story. Ever since it's been Kotlin first for me.
So it's been a journey, right? You went through quite a few languages. Is Kotlin your preferred one?
So Kotlin is my one true love, 100%. But I think it's super interesting to look at other languages as well.
Right.
Especially, so TypeScript I think is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, especially because with Kotlin JS we're trying to build something that's kind of competing. So it's kind of good to know the space anyway. But it's also just a really interesting language. It's the first time that web development is like possible for someone like me who relies on statically typed statically typed language and IDE support. Yeah, I've done a lot of Swift, a lot of Java, and yeah, I've just tried to. I also did some PHP, but we do not speak of this. So yeah, loads of different things. And I think it's important that you try other languages as well, because it kind of keeps your mind fresh. But when I, like, I don't know, when at 3 a.m. an idea strikes me, and I need to pick up a tool to, like, let's go and build this, like let's bang out a prototype, it's gonna be Kotlin 100% of the time.
Yeah. That's cool.
I feel you.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of TypeScript too, because I feel what you said. Like, I started, like, I don't do a ton of JavaScript, but I do like some React stuff and some, and I guess at some point, and maybe for a period of time, I don't know if this is still the case, but like React, or maybe it was Angular switched to TypeScript, and so there's a pretty good TypeScript ecosystem around React too. So I started playing around with React just to get an idea how it worked, and I actually kind of fell in pretty quickly. Like, I felt like, wow, I could be really productive really quickly here, and actually ended up liking it quite a bit. So, but now I'm pretty amped to start messing around with Kotlin too, because we definitely need to build an Android app, because one of our regulars, Sahil, if we don't show him building an Android app with Kotlin with B2C, I think he'll be done with us. So we have to do it. He's been asking us, so we've got to do it now. So I don't want to leave him. I don't want to leave him hanging too long. So no, this is super cool though. So I appreciate you.
So here's a fun little snippet that I just opened. So as I said, we also have Kotlin JS, and you can actually also build React apps with Kotlin JS.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Looks a bit weird when you look at the code for the first time. It's everything's kind of wonky, but this is like an example implementation for just a timer component. It's not using functional components right here, but those also would work. And again, we're doing this fancy thing where you describe your markup, like your CSS and your p tags, or like your div tags. You can describe those directly inside the Kotlin DSL, which again, like, I don't know, or if you have like a styled button, something. It's quite it takes some getting used to, but we do this productively for one of our newest products. So at JetBrains, we developed JetBrains.space, or it's just called JetBrains Space, which is kind of our team environment. Like, it's our like all-in-one solution. And the web front end for this is actually this is probably not gonna come through on the stream, but yeah, the web front end we have for this is all Kotlin JS with React. So it's React with Kotlin.
Does this transpile to pure JavaScript, and can you bring JavaScript into this file without breaking it? Like TypeScript.
Yeah,
I mean.
absolutely.
Yeah,
So
okay.
you can in theory you can even I don't know where a good place for this would be, but in theory we even have a JS function which literally just takes like it can literally take a string of JavaScript and you can execute it inline. Don't do it, but you can do it.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't
Yeah.
do it.
It's
Talking about code injection.
that's kind of dangerous. That's like if you ever read like C code and you read a line that starts with like asm, you're like, uh-oh. That's like
You're like,
it's
yeah,
not gonna be a good time.
abandon all hope.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
is there
yeah,
a
go.
web? So is there a WebAssembly fork or idea or anything going on over at JetBrains side with Kotlin?
We're working on it.
All right, cool.
It's in our plans. It's no secret that we are working on it. We don't have anything to show for right now, but we think WebAssembly is going to be really awesome.
Yeah, I do too.
Also,
Yeah.
also when it comes to just generally, like the whole idea of Kotlin multi-platform actually goes really far, because at the end of the day, like think of the idea of like, oh, you build your library or you build your business logic once and then you export it as a JavaScript library, as a Java library, as an iOS library, as an Android library, and maybe even as a desktop library, all from the same code base. Like that's so and then maybe even as a WebAssembly like library for high performance stuff. So there's a lot of potential there. I'm not saying we're there yet, but there's potential there.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Question: where should people go next? Someone's asking, where do I learn about Kotlin JS? Is there a good starting point? Where do we want to send people to when it comes to learning how to work with Kotlin?
Okay, so generally what I like, so if you are a developer and you've worked with some other language, so first of all, the number one address, kotlinlang.org, that's just where we have all our stuff. There's a huge get started button here. I don't actually know where that takes us, so let's just click it. Cool, that just takes us to how to create a new project. So that's probably not where we want to go. Where we want to go is the learn button, which used to be somewhere here. It's called play now. Okay. I guess it's no longer learning and just playing.
Well,
my
playing
favorite...
is learning, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
You learn through play.
My favorite way of learning, or how I learned Kotlin, is the Kotlin koans, and they're like some exercises where you get broken code, and you get kind of some information about how Kotlin works in this scenario, and then you get to implement it, and you get to run it directly in the browser, or if you can't find it out, you can see the answer down here, and you can just go through these. And by the end of going through all of the koans, you will write already pretty idiomatic Kotlin code.
Very nice. What does
awesome.
koan stand for? Because I remember there was one for F# as well. Does it stand for something?
I think they're like meditations, like short self-contained exercises that you should repeat every once in a while, so that you
like a kata.
Yeah, exactly. Well, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's very similar.
Interesting.
And then if you want to dive more deeply into topics, we also have the hands-on tab up here, and where we have. So if you are interested in Kotlin JS, we have the building web applications tutorial, which is going to be like, depending on how much time you want to take, it's like a 45-minute-ish walkthrough with a lot of materials where you build a full-fledged app. Also, more importantly, it comes with a GitHub repository. You can click on that. You can look at all the code. You might recognize this face. Yeah. So,
someone is saying typealias.com is amazing too. Are you aware of that?
Sorry, what?
Typealias.com.
I've never heard of that. Let's look at it on stream. That never goes wrong.
It's Dave Leeds.
Oh,
Kotlin.
I have seen this. I did not know that his domain was typealias.com. Yeah, I've seen this. I think this is quite nice for newcomers as well. It's quite cozy. Yeah. Apart from that, I think at this point, with Google having adopted this, there are a ton of people who've created educational content around Kotlin, like from zero to hero type content.
Nice.
Yeah, I would just the good thing is that most of the stuff that you find, even if it's a year old or 2 years old, it's still gonna be just fine. Like the language evolves in a very structured manner. You're not like the core of the language has mostly stayed the same. There's also a Coursera course on Kotlin, which let's see if that one. Let's see. I think you can enroll for free. I don't know why they're so pixelated. There we go.
They're hiding their identities.
Well,
Yeah.
when 98% of your CPU is taken up to stream it, you gotta.
So yeah, as we can see, there's a giant button that says enroll for free, and that is a video course which is offered by us and has over 100,000 views. It's done by our ex-project language lead and Svetlana, who's my boss. So you'll be in good hands.
It's awesome.
Wow, so you guys created a Coursera course for Kotlin? That's amazing.
Okay, can I have one? All right, one request. Can I have Kotlin for .NET developers? Kotlin for
So
C#
actually-
people, maybe. We'll say that instead.
As far as I know, the folks from Ktor, spoiler alert, they are currently writing tutorials. There's a let me see if I can show this on stream or if this is still private. Is this a...
Oh, spoiler alert!
No, it's all good. Apparently, it's a public repository. Is it really public? If I put it in a private mode, would it still be fine? Yeah, all good. So it's public. So I'm not spoiling anything here.
Good.
And there's this thing here called ASP.NET to Ktor tutorial.
Okay,
which
cool.
is currently still
Colin.
open.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know
him? No, of him. It's probably the best way to.
Kali, yeah, he's very active on Twitter.
He's very active
so
at .NET.
He recently joined us as a developer advocate as well for our .NET tooling. Yeah, and at least a preliminary version of ASP.NET Core to Ktor migration is somewhere in here with a bunch of example files and stuff as well.
All right, I'm gonna check.
Which I hope will make your life easier.
All right, so I've got one more question for you. I mean, besides like
ask 10 more. I'm here all night. I'm here all week.
So
Go ahead.
So say I want to build something with say it's IntelliJ, right? I do not want to install a JRE. Well, let me be more explicit. I do not want to install an Oracle JRE. So does IntelliJ come with one that I can just use?
JDK, right? There's an open JDK now. You can.
So again, if you have IntelliJ, you're absolutely in luck. This window is a lot bigger than I remember. Man, font size really does things to you. So if you go to your project structure or wherever you need to select a JDK, like here, since a couple of versions we have this fun little button down here called Add SDK, and then there's actually a button here called Download JDK. Ooh. And what this does is you can select your vendor. So you can be like, oh, I want Adopt OpenJDK 15.
Yeah.
You hit the download button. That's going to install that, configure that for you.
Very
You're
nice.
all good.
See,
so if you want to install SAP SAP machine, whatever the heck that is.
Nice.
If you want to... Now that's enterprise right here.
Yes.
Yeah, or if you want to do like Amazon Coretta or something. I'm not sure if you folks are allowed to use that.
Sure, why not? I mean, we've had
different cloud or something.
I mean, we've had you on for 2 hours talking about Kotlin and JetBrains. So I don't think there's any problem using Amazon. I mean, we use the Azul Zulu, and that's what if you run Java apps in App Service and stuff in Azure, that's there. So.
Well, then great. You can just get the Azul Zulu community down here. Download that. It's gonna set it all up for you. No problem.
So then, so one more question.
Actually, when you install, sorry, just to quickly finish this thought. When you install IntelliJ and it doesn't detect one, I think it even prompts you to automatically download. Like, which one do you want? You don't have one yet.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, last question. What's the difference between JetBrains Community and JetBrains Ultimate or whatever? Or sorry, IntelliJ Ultimate and IntelliJ Community. Anything like that would matter for somebody who's just getting started?
Yeah, one of them costs something. That's So, by the way, even that, depending on if you're like in university or school or something, that might not even be true because we
I was going
offer
to say you might have some student licenses, right? Or
we offer free licenses to so many different people. Like whether it's open, if you're developing open source, you get a free license. If you're some kind of, I think there's even if you're some kind of Microsoft recognized MVP or something, I don't know your programs. Then I think you also get free licenses. Like there's a bunch of ways to get free licenses. The main difference that in this context, I guess, is that we have better Spring support in IntelliJ IDEA Ultimate.
Okay.
So the
also you can.
So that
you
doesn't
can't
mean
do,
that your code is.
You can't do Spring, right? You can't. Oh my God, I'm pixelated. You can't do Java Spring if you're on Community. Correct?
You can, but you don't get some of the fancy functionality that we usually have. So, for example, if you have the Ultimate Edition, you get a fancy little window down here called Spring, which is going to show you like all the routes you have to find in your application, and all of the other stuff. But the regular code completion functionality, the inspections, all of this, that will still work in Community Edition.
That's lovely.
Nice.
Because when I was comparing the versions, I saw support for Spring was only on Ultimate, and I automatically assumed that you can't build it. But that's fantastic.
No, so it's you can still do it. You just don't get some of the like fancy features. And maybe there might be a situation where if you're not aware of the framework, it might be like, oh, this function is unused, even though you annotated it as like a get mapping or something. But that's about it. Like your code is not just suddenly gonna be like, oh, it doesn't work. You can't build. Like the play button is vanishing or something.
Right.
So yeah, it's really just one of them has more support for it than the others. And the other big thing, if you're doing like full stack development, so if you have a project that has TypeScript, for example, and Java or Kotlin code, and you want to open both of those in IntelliJ, you're not gonna get support in Community. If you want to do JavaScript support or Python support, actually Python support, I'm not sure. But like, I don't know, JavaScript, Go, like all these kind of languages, C and C++ maybe as well. Those you will need to get Ultimate for.
Okay, good to know.
But again, if you're a like, there are so many ways to get our stuff either discounted or free. If you are an individual, make sure you check out the individual pricing tab as well, because that's like 80% less than for businesses.
Yeah, apparently I have a subscription. I didn't even know. I went to look. Apparently I bought ReSharper because I bought ReSharper years and years ago, and apparently I continue to pay for it because it's still here, and IntelliJ is part of it. So,
see, isn't that great?
Yeah, problem solved. So, well, cool. Well, we gotta we gotta run because somebody's gonna come in after us. But thanks for spending your evening with us. Like I know this is probably not the most ideal way to spend a Friday night, but thanks for hanging out with us. This has been awesome. I'm like super psyched to go try some Kotlin.
Don't go yet. We need to rate people. Don't forget.
Well, no, we are. Instafluff. Let's go. Should we go to Instafluff or Layla?
Well, we have Ed Samberno from Live Coders. We never rated him, so we might want to go there. He's doing some Blazor stuff.
Ooh,
this is. I swear to. Like, is everybody? Is that all anybody does anymore? Is Blazor? I'm pretty sure.
Blazor. Yeah.
That's all it ever is. So, all right, we'll go over to Ed, see what Ed's doing. So, hey, everybody, we'll be back on Monday. Remember, we got a Monday episode next week with Claire Novotny from .NET Foundation. That's going to be a lot of fun. Tuesday, we're going to have an Ignite watch party.
Yep.
So we'll watch the
not
Ignite.
An After Dark one. It will be a Kosher one.
Just imagine a Satya keynote with a bunch of our commentary and sound effects. Doesn't that sound exciting? Riveting.
I don't know if we'll be banned after this one, but we'll try to keep it. Yeah.
So
thanks, everyone.
Anyway, hey,
really
we're gonna go over to Ed's. Everybody have a great weekend. Be sure to reach out to us if you need anything, and we'll see you on the other side. Bye, everybody.
Bye.